some research that I did on BYU Idaho students, but it was for my degree at the University of Utah, and it was on international students. One of those students was from South Africa, and they just talked about their experience growing up in a unique education system. It's unique to them, where they're from, and their home culture, all that, and then entering into BYU Idaho online, and kind of their expectations of what they thought BYU Idaho would be like, and how that was very different than what they were used to and coming from. Particularly about group work, coming from an education system where it was very focused on, passing personal assessments, to coming to BYU Idaho where you're expected to work together in a class, you're expected to peer review papers, those kind of things. Some of those things were new and a little bit frustrating. All the international students I interviewed for my dissertation, consistent theme was, I just want to get in and I want to get out. I just want to be done, that kind of thing. I have my own ward. I have 2 callings. Most of these international students actually started in Rexburg and then went home and finished their degree online. So they may have spent a year or 2 here in Rexburg. But when they went back, I think they got the vision of the spirit of Rex and what it was like. But they didn't necessarily need or even desire the full package. They were busy. They had families, and they felt like the social, spiritual aspects were really taken care of in their home wards and states. And so that's a very focused, targeted sample of students. If you were to change any of those variables, you might get completely different findings. For example, if they came through pathway in Brazil, instead of coming to Rexburg and then going back to Brazil, you might have a completely different perspective from that student. So those are very qualitative findings, very high level. And so then you're going to say, okay, what does that have to do with this topic? Yes?
Just a quick question. How many international students does BYU have on campus? It's quite a bit.
We only have just over 600, so not very much. Not a huge one. Every country is represented. Korea and Brazil are some of the highest enrollers in that group. So, but yeah, it's not huge, and it never has been a huge part of the population. Great question.
But although the Pathways program
exactly, so it'll actually flip. Some of the projections we have, it could mirror. You never know what'll happen, but it could mirror the global church, where there's more outside the U.S. than inside. We'll see. It's an exciting time to be a curriculum developer. Great job security will always be an issue. You can create the same course for 15 different audiences. There you go. There, you have a career right there. So my background, I worked at the Education Policy Center down in Utah. I worked with the legislature, and we followed every education bill. So I worked with the legislature. What is it you want to know about this bill? I do the analysis and come back and present it to them, and then they vote on it. And so it was high stakes issues. Anything from evaluating teachers, all the way from charter schools, all the way to the future of higher ed. So a lot of those issues were debated across not just your typical research who's focused on higher ed, but you might have someone who taught in the K through 12 system who had a unique perspective, who was a state representative, or you might have someone who's an entrepreneur, comes with a completely different perspective on what the future of higher ed should be in Utah across a system of institutions. And then after that experience, I worked at Strayer University, which is a kind of a University of Phoenix, basically. And I was hired by them to run their online program. So we got to work with the U.S. Department of Education on some issues. worked a lot on legal issues and their heavy marketing outside the United States, and kind of some of the issues that I felt has become this little obsession where I try to understand what's going to happen or what has happened at these institutions who have close to 100,000 students online, and then kind of bring that back and say, what are some things that we don't really need to figure out by trial and error. We can kind of get a glimpse of where we're headed. And so I'm going to bring it to this picture. Sure, University is a for-profit university, so very different culture. All of the president, the COO, everyone, they came from like pharmaceutical companies and like Disney. It was just so interesting. The background and how they were running the school like a business. So there's pros and cons to that, mostly cons. And then I take you back to this picture. This picture is the difference, because at the core, our roots. If you want to go back to the allegory of the olive tree in Jacob 5, all our roots, no matter where you teach or where you're from, comes back to trying to teach like the Savior. And if our root is strong and the branches don't grow faster than our root, we will have a successful online degree program, whether we scale to 100,000 or more. Because this is where the spirit resides. Is you have a teacher, and then you have a relatively small group depending on what you teach. I've had 50 students, up to 60 before in one of my sections. Now I'm down to 25 because I teach for education now. How about you? What are some of the class sizes you teach?
25.
25, great.
Is yours online or teacher ed?
Online, yeah, for teacher ed. Yeah. There's only 2 classes that they do, yeah. And most of my students actually live in Rexford, and they're kind of like bottleneck courses here. So it's not like, it's not similar to the classes you probably teach for most of your students or outside of Rexford. In fact, my students come visit me in my office, which is awesome. Great.
I was talking to somebody at breakfast, and he said that the other universities that are running online goes, how come you guys are so successful here? Well, we may have to send a couple missionaries, but then you might figure it out.
Yeah, you really do. You have to witness it for yourself. We could show pictures and graphs and enrollment and our model all day long in these visuals, like other models are trying to do, where you have some of these bigger nonprofit organizations that are marketing directly to you and to us, because they know what we're clicking on in Google and all that. So they send us these feeds of really heavy marketing. But when you go to all the different models of expanding online enrollment and expanding some of these institutions who, for a century plus, have been at relatively the same size, and then over a few years, they're now up to over 100,000 students. There's nothing better to say, just where do you live? Oh, you live in California? I invite you to go see a Pathway site. Then it'll explain itself. You don't have to explain everything. They can fill it once they go into that dedicated building. Coming back to this, President Iron in his inaugural address at Briggs College, call it a struggle for perfection. That's really the education that we're offering. And it's not perfection in the way that the world defines perfection, but it's this distant goal that we continually reach towards. So what do you think educational technology and these innovative models of education have to do with the struggle for perfection? Any ideas? Are we getting distracted in the exciting world of growing international online learning at the expense of understanding the struggle?
Maybe I'm way off track, but the struggle is a personal, individual struggle, and our model is a teacher reaching individuals.
Exactly. Not off at all. So if we come back to the picture, this is our innovative model right here. Very innovative. This is 2,000 years ago. Same model is happening online. I've seen it over and over and over again. My full-time job in online learning evaluator. So students, anything from surveys to actual outcomes and assessments, all the way to what's happening for the online instructors. We see it. It's infinite. This model scales infinitely. And it's because in the heart of the teacher, they felt what President Gilbert mentioned in the prior meeting. Exactly right. This is some things you already know. These are some of my favorite scriptures that just remind me that the Lord knows how to hasten and do his own work. If you read the scripture, it's him hastening it, it's not us. If you read in Daniel, it's a stone cut out of a mountain without hands. We're part of the caravan because we're lucky. So Ismar and I were talking on the way over here. We're just lucky to be a part of it because the Lord's in charge and we do have a prophet. These clusters of students in Arizona, Utah, Brazil are real. When we worked at Strayer University and some of the other online programs that have grown significantly, they do all sorts of things to reach out to their online students. They'll randomly surprise one and give them a bunch of like sweaters and school stuff, and take like a little picture and post it on Instagram, and say, hey, we're building this community way outside of the home campus. And all those things are great ideas, and all those things are needed. But at the core, I don't know if you kind of see what's happening, but on my Facebook, I get an ad all the time. It says a BYU independent study credits will transfer into BYU Idaho. And like there's something happening. We were down last week. It's called the CES Academic Technology meeting we have each year. And each year we get more and more embedded with each other across the institutions of CES. And each year we start realizing, hey, I can't do it without you. They can't do it without me. And so that's just the academic challenge that we're facing. As we realize that we could easily go up to 100,000 students or plus, like other universities have done. How can we get the activities program, other experiences we have here on campus out to the online? And this is something that came up several times in the CES Academic Technology meeting, is that now Pathway provides dashboard for a bishop or stake president out in Brazil. They log in and they're aware of, in the past you've always been, you get this report if you're a bishop. It says, here's how many youth you have that are signed up for seminary. And now here's how many youth you have that are signed up for Pathway. And then maybe down the road, we'd have the same for online learning. It's not the specifics that matter, it's the spirit of not just teachers all over the United States, not just students all over, but the spirit of collaboration between the institutions of higher ed across CES are coming together and saying, let's work on this together. So how do you model or replicate and scale disciple leadership, learning by faith? Some of the experiences that student leaders get here on campus, and it's doable. It's already happening. Speaking partners, tutoring, helping, lifting one another in digital and face-to-face spaces. These clusters of students being able to get together in Arizona with or without our direction from BYU Idaho. It's happening with and without our direct intervention. We hear about students who are posting on Facebook BYU support. There's like 15 different Facebook pages that all seem to be percolating. These online students are starting to be a part of it. And this whole walls between online and campus kind of disintegrate. It's amazing to watch those Facebook pages, to evaluate some of the data and surveys that are coming in from online students. They're finding ways to connect. oh, I didn't know you were taking this class. I actually live in your same state. We should get together. Those things are happening without our direct intervention. And then I'll just make a quick call on some of the things that could happen. This is fake data, but this is a map of the Ghana region, for example. And what is happening? Last week I presented the same presentation down in Salt Lake, and kind of what's happening is that we were able to look at some of the data that Perpetual Education Fund collects and look at some of the data that self-reliant centers collect internationally and employment centers. And it's all the same data that we're going after. Jobs outcome, employment outcomes, and even PDF shows some of their data. They have each employer that they've surveyed and talked to put next to them, here's the top 2 or 3 universities in this region that are our major feeders to our business. And maybe down the road, we'll have those 2 data streams kind of connect, and maybe down the road, like President Gilbert said, a certificate in this from BYU Idaho Online would be one of those top 3. We just don't know how all that's going to shake out, but the cool thing is we're designing it backwards. We're designing it from the end outcome that we hope for our students in their region, which is unique, requires unique curriculum. And then we're designing backwards to kind of get, okay, what do the online student, what do they need and what do they desire? Any questions about that? Any ideas? Any extra ideas on that? Yes.
Currently, does Perpetual Education Fund, can it fund pathway enrollment?
No. And that's both strategic and real, just logical. Go ahead.
Because pathway is highly subsidized anyway, the idea is skin in the game, and the priesthood leadership that directs the expansion of pathway, including the area presidencies of the church, has almost all over outside the U.S. have decided that pathway is not eligible for Perpetual Education Fund loans, and we're just now working into how the logistics of being able to have Perpetual Education Fund loans apply for specific online degree programs that are that mesh with their area.
Yes.
I mean, we don't want somebody in Ghana to take a health sciences or a public health degree and then have it. I mean, that's basically the nightmare of PEF is that we loan them money for a program that's not going to give them the ability to make any money to pay back the loan, and then they fall away from the church because of the embarrassment of not being able to pay back a loan. It's so we're really careful and about exactly who is able to decide which degrees qualify for PEF loans.
Perfect. Yes, you had a comment?
Well, your comment about the social aspect of this it's wonderful. I found though that you have to have an instructor still pointing the way.
Oh yeah.
Because the instruction, because they love it, but then they don't understand what's the expectations of the class. And so I found that I have to be really careful. Like, I love that you're going together. Yes. I love the feedback that they give you. It's not the same as my feedback.
Exactly.
And so you do need that leadership to kind of help the academic side to stay true.
Yeah. And that's a very healthy tension, between what students desire and what they think they want versus what someone in the industry who's teaching health administration, for example, and what they see from the other end, and they push back on that. And that tension is always nice to have in the data that we've evaluated, where we have taken the instructor perspective and balanced out the student perspective. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
talking
no, I
about?
think that's
Yeah.
great. It's,
Yeah,
that's being taken.
It really does kind of swing back and forth, but the average of the pendulum is pretty balanced. Yeah. So it all depends on who reads the data. So the future is now. It's coming quickly. You know, how many students will hit our systems? Speaking of, you know, the learning management system. And then I wanted to just go through real quick this idea of one by one. The last year and a half, this has been part of my job as well. Been working on 2 modules. And it's kind of this like circle surrounding support of the entire student life cycle through a BYU Idaho degree program. We're just barely getting the right modules to be with the right conversation with the pathway. It has to be tight, you know, super tight and functional at a small scale before we, you know, go to the big pathway. So anyway, it has educational strategy. That's a module that a student would go through before they would even start deciding what is their program. If you go to some of the bigger systems of higher ed, like in New York, for example, when you go into Open SUNY, S-U-N-Y, is that State University of New York? I think there's like, is it 46 institutions? They all pool their courses into one place. So from the student's angle, they click their program, and then they start selecting courses that map to that program. They're not just starting courses just to kind of dip their toe into it. It's very economically designed. Like when you pick your program, you're in that program, and you don't mess around. You know, you stay in it. It's very prescriptive to that student. But that's kind of the direction that this is going. Is there are some things that the student thinks they want and need, but they don't know what they don't know. So you take some data and come back and say, when a student logs in, they might have 2 or 3 of these modules that are available to them because that's the right thing for them based on their data trail. So educational strategy is career backwards focus. They click in there and they start looking at the strategy they have for their future goals in their local region. Then grad plan, professional development, already getting them into some sort of real employment opportunity with career and internships. Tutoring, that wraparound service around each of the classes. And then we have student performance and alerts, which is the 2 modules that I administer, which is basically everything predictive that we do. We run students through a bunch of different paths that they've taken, and we start finding indicators that kind of suggest that they're at risk in this program, or they're at risk to follow a certain program. And that's when we start intervening, when they start meeting these competencies or not meeting them. Yes?
So this isn't designed to replace the advising system, but it's designed to, tell me if I'm wrong here, it's designed to alleviate the tens of thousands of new students that we just have no idea how we're going to support.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yep.
Then the intervention comes. So I'm thinking some students, they would never talk to anyone here. They could just go through the system and met their needs.
Yeah, so most students that we've even found so far, they just come to their advising session more informed and better prepared. It hasn't been an either or for them. It really has just been, in fact, one of those modules that you didn't see there is actually an advising system. It's integrated with it. Every interaction an advisor has with them is based on data. So an advisor, if they have assigned to them about 1,000 students, they would first reach out to those that are the highest at risk. That's kind of how it's going. But that qualitative data they're entering in, I talked to the student, we talked about their plan, that merges with BYU Idaho support system. So we know those students that need a face-to-face or a phone call or an email. So it's very, it's very specific, yes.
How do they help students know what they want to do? Is there?
I mean, there's no magic formula,
Sure.
right?
Nobody knows.
And there's always plenty of error, depending on the training the advisor has or the background the advisor has. You do your best as an advising center to train them to know what to even say. But most often advisors are student employees, and getting that student who's in that degree, maybe they're a junior or a senior, they have an idea of kind of what to tell them. In most cases, the ideal is that they've had an internship so far. When we first rolled this out, like our first beta, it actually had their faculty member on campus as their advisor contact. And so when we first rolled out, and a faculty would log in and they would say, you have 1,300 students to advise by, like next 2 weeks or something like that, which I thought was really kind of cool, because for that campus faculty, that was really like the awakening moment, being like, oh my goodness, I teach about 300 at the most students per semester, and you're telling me there's 1,200 that I will never meet, so that was kind of the unanticipated consequence of that, which was nice. Because then they start thinking, oh wow, this is a really big deal. How do we advise 1,200 students when you don't have the ability to see them weekly in your class? So, I mean, there's going to be lots of wheels to grease and lots of, but that's natural. Yeah, I think that's great. So back to this one by one, the idea of predictive analytics isn't to replace a teacher. I don't know, I mean, that phrase I just said, I probably said that phrase more than my 2 years as a missionary of saying other phrases. Predictive analytics is not to replace a teacher. Predictive analytics is to help a student get to a certain level to where when they do enter the classroom or they enter their program, they're the most informed and they're the most prepared as possible. But at the end of the day, it's to help them have that one-by-one interaction with an instructor that's loving. And so just over the last year, as we started developing these modules, we've met with the missionary department, the priesthood department, MTC, Seminary Institutes, Self-Reliance Center, Perpetual Education Fund folks. Everyone's starting to realize, oh, we're all in this together. The temporal and spiritual salvation is one and the same. What can we do? If Pathway, based on some data and some analysis that we know, Pathway GS 120 is way above what they're ready to do. So what can we do to get that data as quickly as possible to get them into the right path or the right competency level? That'll just get better and better. Our data will become more and more trained. We'll be able to predict with just a little bit more confidence when we do have a lot more students. Right now, those models I mean, some of the variables we're throwing out there explain, like, if you're into statistics, like 17% of the variance, like, it's not very good at all. It's like, it's the same as closing your eyes and throwing a dart at the wall. But they are getting a little bit better as we get more students. But again, it's just that reminder of the struggle for perfection, as all this is to help them have an experience and keep them close to the church. Do you have any thoughts, Jim? I mean, you've been around us for 8 years. Any feelings that you've had over the last 8 years, or just impressions that come to mind?
Yeah, not really faith promoting impressions, more
Oh, fantastic.
fear.
Yes.
Of just this whole scaling thing.
Yes.
So I'm glad other people can see A to Z, because I see B to D.
Good.
On some of these things. So yeah, my fear is, I'm sure we can get as big as we can as possible. How are we going to staff it? How are we going to evaluate?
Yeah.
I want to know if the stuff I'm doing is even working at all.
Yes. And we'll get there.
Yeah, advising, how are we going to advise them? So yeah, I'm not the most faith-producing person at times, but I know we're going to come up with answers, but it's kind of scary.
Yes. Yes. And that's very healthy. at every council meeting or teaching group that you're a part of, just remember that your perspective is so needed in each one of those. Kind of this reminder that this is exciting. The Lord is hastening his work with or without us, you know. If we jump out of the boat just for a few moments, just to, you know, catch our breath, the boat's moving so fast and the rapids are so big, you might not get back in the boat. If you remember Elder Ballard's talk, it's just like there's no time to jump out of the boat. Stay in the boat. We're led by prophets and seers, like you said, but in order to get there, the steady upward course will require some frank discussions of what really happens when the rubber hits the road. Yes?
My impression is that you really want to maintain the spirit of Rick's, right? I mean, that was emphasized in the other two, and that's the key, is to give them the Rick's College experience or BYU Idaho experience in Ghana.
That's right.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Because if you stop losing the spirit of Rick's, then you kind of probably stop losing the spirit of BYU Idaho.
Yeah. And I'll be completely honest. I've had this conversation. This is like my fourth time to present this, just in the last 3 weeks to different audiences, and each perspective comes in. But I just keep having this impression come back over and over again that, you know, the priesthood that dedicated this space, this wonderful institution, as wonderful it is, you know, it's the same priesthood that dedicated the Stake Center in Ghana. And we talk about the mission of BYU Idaho. Read those words. This was one of my favorite activities that I've done. I've taken all the BYU Idaho language that we're used to, spirit bricks, all those things, and then I've found synonyms in the church handbook of instructions. So church handbook 2, get in there and read it through the lens of, this is BYU Idaho. You read that handbook and it talks about, you know, build testimonies of the Lord Jesus Christ, create a wholesome environment for social, culture. I mean, it's all in there. Read the Aaronic priesthood, young women, it's in there. Prepare them to be parents and fulfill their role in the community. It's all in there. So it's really powerful, and that we shouldn't underestimate this little small thing that a bishop and stake president does when they log into their organization on LDS.org. They'll see that I have 5 pathway students that are enrolled in pathway, or I have, who knows how many there'll be in the future per state. And then the second challenge is go back and read the history of BYU. Go read the history of Spirit of Rick's, the history of Rick's College, and you'll start to learn about that the Lord has been in charge from the very beginning of this dispensation, and that the revealed principles of education are all throughout those books. So the history of theirs, that's what we get to be a part of. We're just lucky to be kind of on the, a little bit on the tail end of that. All the foundation that have been placed for church education, it's solid rock. It's based in the priesthood, and the original model of education was at the stake level. Bannock Stake Academy, they're all over. It was always directed by a stake president who was concerned about the temporal and spiritual welfare. This is one tool. Pathway, BYU Online, is one tool of many that they'll be inspired to help their fathers and mothers and teenagers and children to experience firsthand the Spirit of Rick's. You call it whatever you want in Ghana, but it is the Spirit of Rick's, the spirit of friendliness, the spirit of a smile, the spirit of lifting and teaching each other. Just if you are interested in system level growth, getting to the 100,000 level, we are not the first ones to deal with this. There's one of my favorite books is Higher Ed Systems 3.0. It's kind of saying we've done a certain level of higher education for a long time. 3.0 is this idea of what I said about open student. Just go there and you'll see student clicks. They have no idea that their courses came from 4 different institutions, but it doesn't matter to them. We learn to collaborate. We learn to provide that for them. And just a random well, when these systems of higher ed, Georgia just merged like I don't know, almost 200-year-old institutions. Just like one night they just said, hey, they no longer are self-sufficient financially, that kind of thing. Let's just merge them, put them on one platform, and it happens to be the same one that we're doing.
Well, I didn't understand his reference to BYU Hawaii. Is there something they're doing that it's not being done here?
So that's the beauty, is Hawaii's been doing English as a second language for much longer than, BYU and BYU Idaho, just by the nature of where their institutions. So they have curriculum that they've built it's a 50-50. It meets some of our needs at BYU Idaho, and then there's some that we might have to finagle through. Jim or Rachel has been part of that design. It meets the needs of their region. So we'll have, but we don't have to start from scratch. It's basically what it means. Yes.
Modeling.
Yeah. But on the students' end, they'll have no idea that curriculum came from BYU Hawaii. They just think, oh, it's just BYU Idaho.
It's just administrative.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Just real quick, hasten the work. We have a bunch of different strategies we can use. The Lord's doing it, and some of these tools that are coming provide a way for us to, with data, reach out to that student in real time and hopefully achieve that spirit of race that you mentioned. Yes.
I just want to comment that international students don't view and don't lend much importance to where the content comes from, like whether it's BYU Idaho or BYU Hawaii or it's BYU Provo or they view it as coming from the church, which is scary because you have students who think that this is like the extent of it. When I come home from my mission, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because the church is offering me this, and so that's when advising takes on much greater importance, because you're like, these kids would do anything just to be involved in a church education, even if it's not going to help them.
There's a lot of faith when they come to Casper for it. They think this is going to solve all their problems, and I'm curious. You're saying that hopefully the data can help us.
And that's like Jim was saying, we have some healthy fear that keeps us grounded. And, there's tremendous things that are going to happen. You are literally, I've seen how the for-profits work. They have limitless resources and limitless mission creep. But we, in BYU Idaho, we have very specific mission, and we get to be part of it. We're lucky. But as far as infrastructure, local leadership by region, there's just no other nonprofit out there that even comes close to that.
Well, there's no for-profit either.
That's right.
That has 28 or what is it now, 30,000 congregations with every one of them with their leaders, and that could potentially.
And to be quite honest, if you want to get in the data, it's not when this is going to happen, but the leaders have gone through pathway that's already happening tremendously. It just gives me chills to even think about it. That the bishop has been through pathway, so they know exactly how to advise. Think about that. You don't have to send an advisor from BYU Idaho out to the middle of Mexico to train some advisors, because.
So they're asked to do this?
No. This is just all. The message in Central America, South America is simply like, getting an education is part of being a disciple of the Savior. It's the future, just some type of education. And President Hinckley's, talked about that. Almost every priesthood meeting I could remember when he was prophet. I'm just saying, like, there's something to this education. It's not separate from your spiritual salvation. It's completely integral. Yes.
So what have you gleaned from other universities as far as evaluating the effectiveness of courses, or evaluating anything?
Yeah,
that's what I'm most concerned about.
The beauty. This This is a little bit of an extension of this that I gave last week down in Salt Lake. The beauty of this is that there's two models. There's a model of higher ed that's where all the data systems are disjointed. So when you evaluate, you have your data on that specific curriculum for that module or that course, you evaluate that in isolation from what the student's experiencing with the TA, what they're experiencing with the tutor, what they're experiencing with their advisor. All those data systems come, and it's no longer the course is the level of analysis, it's the student. So the student is the center level of analysis, and the curriculum is just one touch point. The instructor is another touch point. However, the data systems, that's the 360 view of the student. And that's what we did at Strayer. I mean, we had the resources to do that, and that's kind of where we're almost there, because the iPlan that I showed you, the data systems will be in the same data warehouse that we analyze as the LMS. So is this a curriculum issue, or is this an advising issue? Who's to say that teaching and advising is different? I'm teaching about health administration in one conversation, and then I'm advising you on like potential careers in the second conversation. Those walls just break down. What's happening inside the course versus outside is no longer an issue. It really is about the program. It's analyzed at the program. And that's the nice thing about seeing the data talk to each other.
So the methods of getting that data is probably gonna be the same,
Yes,
but they're just gonna reside in one place.
that's right.
Lots of ties to each other.
That's right. And we're finding, we're doing different analyses that the data is not clean enough. It's not big enough for us to be confident in our predictions, but it is at least descriptive of what's happening right now. Those tools are not self-service tools yet. So if we were to scale that and every curriculum advisor or curriculum designer had access to those, someday you will have access to that. You'll know more about those students than the instructor does. On a normal campus face-to-face class, the online instructor will know more about those students than it's ever been possible in the past. And you won't be alone. It won't be just the instructor that has to deal with a student whose writing is way below GS 120 expectations, as mentioned previously. Then I'll just close with this. If there's no more questions, this is what I hope to get out of this little session. Participants will learn what's out there in the global higher ed environment. And I didn't even get into the Philippines. That was the main case study, but I kept feeling like I needed to focus on these other slides. So the Philippines, just real quick, is where I've spent the last 10 years of some of my work, where we've addressed like kind of this holistic model of healthcare and business development, working with governments and everything to wrap around an education system that would work. And the Philippines, they don't know it, but they're on the edge of innovation. They're creating a centralized support service system. They have the ability and discounts. Being a developing country, they're getting the top-notch 360 view of every single student that goes through that system. So it's not just academic, it's not just student support services that's centralized. It's also academics that's becoming centralized. And the curriculum is being designed backwards. Each island has its own unique economy, its own unique needs, and it's being designed at the program level. That was kind of what I was going to go through. And if you want to talk more about that, just shoot me an email. This vast universe may or may not impact the global reach of BYU Idaho. There's some things that other universities are doing that's great for them, but we have a specific mission. We know what our mission is. Further discussion will include how my realist view of educational technology, innovative models of scale can be used with eyes wide open to build community and a spirit of risk between students taking courses from different countries and cultures. That's really what the intent of this session was about. Any questions before I close or sign on? What does that have to do with being an online instructor? What does any of that have to do with you?
for me, in my second semester teaching pathways,
Awesome.
the big picture is important,
Yes.
because I can come back and address, and I'd love to focus on the individual and what President Iron said, and the talk about what do it. That was just wonderful to focus me on what I should do. So it's kind of macro, micro.
Awesome.
There's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, and then when you have a phone conversation or email exchange back and forth with the student, you can deeply, genuinely, with everything, just say, this is the Lord's work.
Well, I love the hastening. I think that's
Yes.
something that's sticking with me. This is another example of the hastening. It's not just the increase in missionaries, but the BYU Idaho
Yeah.
online community is
Yeah.
another example.
And yeah, talk to the brethren. They don't see any difference between missionary and CS. It's all one work. What happens to that missionary when they come home? What happens to the missionary before they go out on the mission? All those representatives are at the same table as the CES folks. PF, that's completely tied in with a mission president. If you were a mission president for that short 3 years, and for the next 20 years, you're tracking each one of your missionaries, you're going to be knocking on PF's door saying, what more can you do for my missionaries? Or you're going to be knocking on Pathway BYU Idaho. You're going to be working with all of them. Any other impressions or thoughts? What this has to do with being an online instructor? Yes.
I just think that, and maybe this is what he was trying to say, but it just gives us a perspective that we're being allowed to be a part of.
That's right.
This is the work. This is not just something that the Lord is doing. This is His work, and it's just a privilege to be a part of it. And if we continue to have that perspective as we teach, as we facilitate, then I think we'll be able to see more and more the results of the Lord. Well, the Lord's handiwork.
Yeah. Just keep your nose clean. Then you get to continue for another couple of years in being a part of it. So don't jump out of the boat.